so excited to introduce Jennifer Palmieri. She is the best-selling author of Dear Madam President and her newest book, She Proclaims. Jennifer was also the Director of Communications for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign, and before that, she served as the White House Communications Director for President Barack Obama. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we're so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to speak with you both. It's it's great to be with you, and it's a great thing you're doing. So happy to be part of it.
So we wanted to start by talking about your book, Madam President. You talk about being a woman in the Oval Office.
Yep.
So for people who may not know yet, could you explain what the Oval Office is, its importance, and maybe also if you could touch on how you felt being one of the rare people, especially as a woman, who actually got to spend time in that room?
That's a great question. So the Oval Office is where the President of the United States works out of. The president has always been in an Oval Office. It used to be in the actual house, the residence of the White House. There are 2 Oval rooms there. And then the one that we use now is in what we call the West Wing of the White House, is where the president works. And it's an interesting thing that it was designed to be oval so that when you're speaking with the President of the United States, no one is ever in a corner. That everyone's sort of forced to come together and speak to each other. Isn't that a neat concept? And so when I worked for both President Clinton and President Obama. And when I worked for President Obama, it's a scary experience when the first time you walk in there to meet him or have your first meeting with him. And he knew that, so he would try to put people at ease and ask questions of you and make sure that you felt comfortable, because he knows it's just overwhelming. And it is overwhelming to walk into that room. You're just, you sort of can't believe it actually exists in the real world, right? Because you've seen it so much in movies and televisions or presidents giving addresses from it. And it can be an intimidating experience. And what I want, for women to know is I'm somebody that had doubts about myself walking into the ultimate room, the room of all rooms, right? In the White House. And a couple of things I learned from President Obama that I think can have applications for all women. He would, if at the end of the meeting, if you had not spoken, he will ask you what you thought. And usually the people who had not spoken at the end of the meeting were women. And I found that he got the most sort of insight and an interesting idea from the women, particularly women of color, because they were going to have a different perspective from everybody else. A lot of the people in the room were men that had all went to the same Ivy League schools, all had the same jobs. And, sometimes when you're in a meeting or, any kind of session with people and you are not, maybe you're one of the few women or a few people of color, you might feel like if your ideas are different than everybody else's, you shouldn't speak up. But of course you should speak up all the more, right? Of course, if you have something to say that hasn't been said, it's really valuable to hear it. And nobody looks at the world today and thinks we have it all figured out, right? Nobody thinks that. So to hear from more voices, more perspectives really matters. And the other thing I learned from President Obama was one time he actually got frustrated with some of us. It was a meeting with just women. And that happened on more than one occasion because there were a lot of women that worked for him. And he could tell that one of us was holding back. And he's like, speak up. You are in the room. And he gestured around, to the round, round walls. He's like, see, it's the Oval Office. This is it. And I need you to speak up. And what I realized was it's not just speaking up and using your voice isn't just about female empowerment and feeling good about yourself, but it's doing your job. And whether that's, in that case, I was the White House Communications Director, or if it's your job as a citizen, it's the 2 of you are doing to use your voice in whatever way that you can. So if you doubt yourself, know that I had to walk in with a lot of doubts about my own abilities and overcome them in the room of all rooms. And I was able to do it and contribute because I had something to say that was different than everybody else. And if you still doubt yourself, remember that if Barack Obama were in your meeting or your session or whatever it is, he would ask you what you thought. He would definitely want to know what you thought, and that should give you the little extra added boost to speak up.
Following up on that, how can people around the world really help women feel more like they do belong in places such as the Oval Office and that their voice is important?
I think, I have my, Dear Madam President, you all have read that, I wrote that to sort of illuminate the obstacles that I saw women still faced, right? Particularly after working for for the first woman to be a major nominee for a party to run for president. And now with my new book, She Proclaims, I want to say, okay, so here's what you do about it. And the book in 2 words is support women. And that includes yourself. And I think, and this is, it's interesting, in other parts of the world, there are plenty of women leaders. That's not happened in this country. And I think that part of the reason is the way we elect our president is very, some countries elect their president, Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, right? She's the woman who beat coronavirus. That's a parliamentary system. She's selected as the party leader from a group of her colleagues in the parliament, and then she faces the country. In America, you have to run for president on your own, right? You win your party's nomination on your own, and then and so it's harder for women to go out on that massive scale. And I think that's part of the reason why we haven't had a woman who's made it all the way here. But what you see across the world is, when women are leaders, how effective they are. When they control more than 30% of a Congress or a legislature, they are able to, that's sort of considered the tipping point. 30%, when it's 30% of an institution is women, that's when women stop feeling sort of other-ish and can just flourish. And so what you want to do is get whatever your group or institution or workplace or profession is to that 30% number. And I think, a lot of women feel like they're in competition with each other for some sort of finite amount of success, which is a ridiculous concept. If you really believe that you're in competition with other women, like, think about what's at the root of that. I think what's at the root of that is you believe you don't actually belong in the professional world or the world of politics or the world of arts or whatever. If you think you're in competition with other women, you're saying that this place is not really built for us, it was built for somebody else, and only one of us can succeed. And I think that really keeps a cap on not just women, but all women, all people of color, from being able to succeed. If we think that we're pitted against each other, it hurts everyone. And I've always tried to support other women in my career, but I would do it with some misgivings and some doubts in my mind about if I might be helping my competitor, or I might be helping somebody who's going to outshine me or replace me. And now I see that is the mission. Supporting other women is the mission. And more women in power begets more women in power. More women in the room begets more women in the room. More women doing shows like this begets more women understanding their own power and doing it themselves too, right? I so believe this. And it's, if I no longer look at women as a competition. They are my support system, and it is us banding together to support each other that is going to get us over these hurdles. For a long time, women made steady progress in the world for decades, and about 20 years ago, we just sort of plateaued. And I think this is why. I think this is the missing piece, is not understanding that our fortunes are aligned with each other.
Thank you for that response. That was so inspiring.
Yay! Be inspired, ladies. There's women inspire me so much. So brave, so competent, so resourceful, work so hard. And we got nothing left to prove. There's just nothing left for women to prove. So you're not, even if you're hitting plateaus and glass ceilings, you are not doing it wrong. The realization I've had is just, we've come as far as we can come in a man's world. And by that, I mean a place where we think we have to follow a man's path. We have to sound like men and dress like them and lower our voice before we speak and work harder than them and be held to a higher standard. And it's just not true anymore. And you got to, for a while, following a man's path worked, and now it's turned into a rut and we got to bust out of that.
Yeah. And that's all in Jen's book, so definitely go read that. Another really, my favorite part of the book was
Yay.
when you talked about that morning, waking up that morning after the 2016 election. I know that everybody knows how they felt on that day and maybe even how their family members felt on that day. But I found your perspective as someone who worked so closely in that campaign with Hillary, um, and as somebody who's seen a lot happen, really interesting and unique. So can you share how you felt on that day?
It felt like, um, it felt like the scene in the movie that you don't ever see, like the scene in the movie where you don't save the world just in time, but the world explodes. It felt like, I mean, I didn't want to go to sleep on election night because I knew that when I woke up on Wednesday morning, it was going to be real. And Tuesday night, it still felt surreal. And it felt like, it had been on us, the Clinton campaign, to save the world, and we let her blow up. I saw President Obama on Monday night, the night before the election. We did a rally with him and Bruce Springsteen in Philadelphia, and he pointed at me as he was walking out, and he said, "Do not mess us up." Although that's not what he actually said, ladies. And those are not actually the words he used. He used more colorful language. And I was like, "We got it, we got it." And I just so desperately, I think a lot of us felt this way. I just so desperately wanted to go back to Monday night, right? I wanted to have a do-over for Tuesday. And then you're just devastated. And I was really worried that, young women your all's age, I had just met Olivia probably 2 weeks before that in Seattle. What are young women going to think? What are about their place in the world that somebody like this can become president, and what can they hope for, and how are, what woman's going to look at what Hillary went through and think, oh, what I want to do? Sign me up for that. I want to run for office. And instead, I think we felt like it was so wrong. The outcome was so wrong to us. Like, we're talking about beyond politics, but just like that someone, if you feel this way, you feel this way, but someone like him could rise to power over her you're like, wow. Instead of feeling demoralized, I'm going to feel empowered, because that confirms to me the doubts I've had in my head all along that something wasn't quite right. And I am not giving up. If this is possible, then I can do something extraordinary too. And it's on me to do that. And when I saw the Women's March, I didn't go because I wanted to see, like, how's America going to respond in this moment? And when I saw the news reports come over my phone of millions and millions of women turning out, I was like, we are never going back. This is it. This is the change. And it is, and these women are never going back. We are never backing down. And then I saw all the women that ran for office. And the great thing about all the women that ran for office all across the board, right? Like school council to president, Congress, they didn't run because they were sure they were going to win. It wasn't like a calculation, like, I'm definitely going to win, so I can do this. This is my big shot to advance my career. They ran just because they knew that their voice mattered and they had something to offer, whether they're going to win or not, right? That's when I should be optimistic about the future of America, because that's what American women believe about ourselves. We believe that we have so much to offer. We believe that we're not getting the success that we deserve. We want to support each other. We have each other's backs, as we literally did in that march, and we're never going back. So as devastating as that Wednesday morning is, I wanted to start Dear Madam President with that moment to kind of bring us back to how that felt, and then appreciate what it felt like when we turned the corner and we're like, no, I am not going to be defeated. Whether or not I am defeated is my choice, and I choose to be empowered.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
Yay! Right? Isn't that how you all felt?
I remember that Women's March, and I know Layla was there too, and just the fact that it was like that, and I had that feeling in Seattle. She had that feeling. I think she was in DC, and it's just and that was everywhere, and it was just the most empowering feeling.
Alaska. I had some friends that marched in Anchorage. Just I was in New Orleans for it, and my husband and I escaped to New Orleans for the Trump inauguration, and which was a very inspired move on our part, I thought. And New Orleans had this huge march too. It's just and it's that same. I mean, I write about it, and she proclaims. I write about the sort of history of the suffrage movement, right? And the 100th anniversary of women winning the right to vote is August 26th.
Yeah.
And, you know, they had that same burning, right? They are just women with no power who were like, no, I deserve more. I'm going to, you know, I'm going to write down that women deserve the right to vote, and I'm going to go out and fight for it. And it took 72 years, but they got it done. You know, we've always had this in us. And this is our charge, women that aren't on the earth today, to push it forward.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to the 2016 election, how was that different from the 2008 election and then Obama's re-election? And are you seeing any similarities or differences with the preparation for this upcoming election in November?
Yeah. So I thought when I went to go work for, so I was working for President Obama as communications director. I left the White House to go work for Hillary. And I just didn't think, it's going to sound stupid now, but I didn't think it was going to be that hard or that big of a deal to elect the first woman president, because we had elected the first, right? It just seemed like, oh, sure. Okay. So I guess Hillary would be the first woman president. Great. Good for her. I didn't think it was a big deal. I thought we had elected the first Black president, and that's way harder in America. And I knew it would be hard because there's all this stuff that hangs around Hillary. But I didn't appreciate that all of that, you know, all of the, why she's such a polarizing figure, why people say about her, there's something about her I just don't like, there's something about her I just don't trust, that sort of, when people can't quite explain what it is about what they don't like about her, but they just like really don't like her. What I've come to learn is, not to say that everybody who feels that way is actively sexist, but I think we have a lot of gender bias in our heads about what a leader looks like. And someone like her, a woman who for 40 years has been pushing the limits of what, busting out of roles that women normally play from when she was, you know, your all's age. There's something confounding, vexing about her. We can't quite make out what she's about, what motivates her. There's something about her we just don't like. And I just I didn't appreciate how that was just going to affect everything. And in 2008, America was coming out of a tough time economically, but it didn't feel as divided as it felt in 16. You know, I felt like, and I could feel it as early as 2015. I felt that there was a reckoning to be had. There had been a lot of economic changes, a lot of demographic changes in America, but even more so, you know, at our founding, almost 250 years before, we were founded on this great idea that everyone was created equal, but those rights only applied to a man if he was white and he owned land, right? And so we had genocide of indigenous people, we had slavery, women were excluded from having rights at the very start. And it just felt to me like that bill came due. And that was just like, I just saw this like roiling of frustration across the board coming every state we went to. And I went to almost every state in the country in some form, and just anger and frustration, hurt, pain. I mean, we saw in the protests this summer after George Floyd's killing, just like agony out in the streets from Black Americans. And in 16, I was like, I felt like we were sort of first through the looking glass on the Clinton campaign. You're like, whoa, this is something really different. And with 2020, you know, I think that, you know, for me, the way I feel about it, the way I felt about like how I look at women's standing in America, I look at standing people of color, is like, we're facing up to tough facts, but at least it's all out in the open, right? And we don't have to hide from it. We know what the challenges are. I was really pleased with the way America reacted to George Floyd's killing. For whatever reason, it just like flipped a switch with white people, where it just like too late, you know, too little. But wow, now we see this happens to every Black person in America has to live with this fear. And so I feel optimistic going into 2020 that as much as people, you know, we talk about how divided we are, we've been that way for a while. And I do feel like we're trying to reckon with it now. So it's all, and I know that it's all, it's all dependent on each of us, not just voting, but trying to, you know, be good citizens and bridge divides.
Absolutely. And this next question, I think, is a good transition question from the previous one. you talk a lot about the concept that is losing and yet remaining undefeated. So we're wondering, how are those related, and how have you personally been affected by both of these qualities?
So there are, women often are in a situation where we work really hard and we're disappointed. That is not a new feeling to us. And so what I've learned to say is, like, you can't control the outcome. All you can control is the effort you put into something. And so I put a lot of effort in everything I do, and I overwhelm myself, and I, get bogged down and commit to too much. But I try to put my best effort into things that really matter. And whether the outcome, and then it's like, as my yoga teacher would say, and then it's up to the universe if it's going to reward you or not. But what matters, what's in your control is, Hillary talks about this a lot. It's the try, right? This is what I talk about when I say, like, I'm so inspired by women who want to run for office, even if they don't win. It's in the try. That's where the value is, doing the best you can do with what you have. That's what I think success actually is. And it was interesting when we lost in the 16 campaign. I mean, everybody was devastated, obviously, but I felt like the men we worked with were broken in a way that the women weren't. And I think maybe it's because for the women, it wasn't the first time we had really given our all and been disappointed. And for some of them, that was a new feeling. I thought about that when Brett Kavanaugh testified at his hearing to become the Supreme Court justice. And he was so angry that this woman, Christine Blasey Ford, made this accusation about him, and he might not get what he considered to be his, what he was entitled to, right? And I was like, wow, you seem really frustrated. That seems like a new emotion for you. It's not a new emotion for me. I've had to control that emotion my whole professional life, right? And so I think if you are able to appreciate the effort you put into something more so than the outcome, you don't have to be defeated. That is totally within your power. Being defeated means you've given up, means you're not going to continue to try, means that you don't think your own effort has value. And what I've learned is that's the only thing that matters. Is because even if Hillary had won, I know that, like, the election night celebration would not have been what I would have really enjoyed. Sometimes at the end of a hard effort, you're just frustrated and exhausted. And, but I appreciated, even before the outcome, I was like, okay, I have done everything I can do, and I'm really proud of the effort we put into this. And that was enough.
And lastly, what do you have to say to anyone putting themselves out there, whether it be political or not, whether it be a woman or not, about losing and maybe feeling defeated, and how to kind of overcome that feeling?
If you put yourself out there, you're likely to lose, right? That's the most likely outcome. And you're also likely to get criticized. And if you're trying to make change, it doesn't mean you're doing either thing wrong, right? Winning is, and you shouldn't engage just only if you're sure you're going to win. Otherwise, you're not going to learn anything, and you're not going to learn the really important lesson I did about that. What actually matters is the try. What actually matters is the effort. And by the way, it's kind of the fun part too, is the strive. It's like how you strive for something. And even if and you're likely to get criticized too if you're doing, and it doesn't mean, I think for women, when we get criticized, when people challenge what we say, we think we're doing something wrong, and you're not. I have a chapter, Move Forward, Draw Fire, because nothing draws fire like a woman moving forward and challenging systems. But it really does happen to anyone. Kirsten Gillibrand, y'all know, senator from New York who ran for president. She is super ambitious, just sort of fearless in general. And I've talked to her about this. And she said doing sports really helped her because she was not afraid to lose. And I think that if you understand that losing, if you're able to banish from your head the idea that that's some kind of, that losing is a failure, as opposed to not trying is the failure, you're gonna do better.
Well, thank you so much, Jen, for your time.
My pleasure.
Now that this talk is over, it's time to take action. Please go check out Jennifer's books, which include Dear Madam President, an open letter to the women who will run the world, and She Proclaims, Our Declaration of Independence from a Man's World, which is pictured right behind Jen. Jen would also like you all to check out fairfight.com to make sure everybody has an easy and safe option to vote and see how you can help with that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, ladies. That was terrific.